going into the 2024-25 season, there are a lot of kind of questions over how good can the Chicago Bulls be next season? What will their record be? Well, on today's episode, I'm going to talk about why one of the Bulls' biggest tests as far as their record comes from inside their own division. So we're going to be looking at the Central Division and how the Bulls stack up in that division. We're also going to look at the Bulls' position cap battles, as I just found out something that's going to make it even a little bit more interesting. And Billy Donovan ranks 24th in CBS's poll in the top coaches in the NBA. We're going to get into all that and more right after this.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bulls Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bulls news and content.
What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host here, Haize, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that being said, let's go ahead and get into this content for today, y'all. And I want to talk about what I think is the Bulls' biggest test next season. No, it's not, can they make the play-in? No, it's not how they measure up against, well, in a way, some of the top teams in the East. And that's what it comes down to. It comes down to their own division, the Central Division. The Central Division, which may be one of the more competitive divisions in the game of basketball, but especially in the Eastern Conference next season, especially the Chicago Bulls end up being better than what people are expecting, right? When you look at it, the Bulls are in a division that's really tough. The Milwaukee Bucks, the Cleveland Cavaliers, and the Indiana Pacers all finished with a top six record in the Eastern Conference last year. That means they all got to avoid the play-in tournament, right? And then when you take that down a little bit further, there are only two teams in the Eastern Conference last season that had above 50 wins, and that was the Boston Celtics and New York Knicks. The other three best records in the Eastern Conference all came from the Central Division. The Milwaukee Bucks with 49 wins. The Cleveland Cavaliers with 48 wins. The Indiana Pacers for 47 wins. Now, they were tied with a couple other teams for 47 wins, but it still comes down to it. The Central Division in the Eastern Conference is going to be one of the toughest divisions, and for a lot of different reasons. Now, you can have your own personal opinion on these teams, and I can understand that, right? No, make no mistake about it. The one thing that makes the NBA a little bit more unique than some of the other leagues in professional sports is that you cannot win your division. You can still make the playoffs. And matter of fact, it doesn't. Only one team can win the division anyway. And when it comes down to it, like, we are about a decade or so removed. It was in the early 2000s where every team in the Central Division made the playoffs one year. Made the playoffs one year. So that's 5 out of 8 seeds came from one division in the Eastern Conference. Now, I'm not saying that that's going to happen this season because, how I feel about the Chicago Bulls. I don't think this Bulls team is going to win a lot of games next year, but it does have a big test. And when you look at the Central Division as well, a lot of the teams either got better or they were coming off big trades made last season that they're hoping with another year of experience under their belts they could be a little bit better at, right? So you look at, for example, the Milwaukee Bucks. They had 49 wins last year. That team changed coach even when they had a winning record last season in the middle of the season, on top of adding Dame Lillard a little bit before training camp opened last season. So, he got to have a full training camp, but that was a lot of different things. Dame Lillard was going through a divorce on top of, switching cities, things like that. So, of course, the Milwaukee Bucks are hoping that another year of experience under their belts as a team, can help them even be higher than those 49 wins that they had last season. Now, I look at this Bucks team, and I say this is a team that's going to win a lot of regular season games. I truly think the Bucks are going to win a lot of regular season games. I don't know what that means for their positioning going forward or anything like that, as far as can they make it out the Eastern Conference or anything like that. But this is a team that had a pretty quiet offseason when it came down to it. Yes, they got A.J. Johnson in the draft. They also got Tyler Smith in the draft as well, a player that could be ready to take over the role of Bobby Portis at some point as a scoring big for that team. But this is still a team that has a lot of questions, right? They are top-heavy, don't have a lot of quality depth coming off that bench. It's really Bobby Portis, DeLon Wright. You're hoping that Pat Connaughton can provide some things for them as well. They do have Gary Trent Jr. There also as a player that can help provide some bench scoring for them and bench production overall for them if they're able to, if he's able to come in and be off the bench what he was for Toronto. Probably their best acquisition from last season. From this offseason, it was Gary Trent Jr. able to bring him in. But there's still a team that has some defensive issues, has some issues on the pecking order of their offense, has some coaching issues in Doc Rivers, who isn't a coach that I feel very, some Bulls fans want to see Doc Rivers coach in Chicago. And I think even in that CBS poll we're going to talk about a little bit later, Doc Rivers and Billy Donovan are kind of in the same tier there. That's kind of how I view them. They're almost the same person, have a lot of the same limitations there. But, you have Brook Lopez getting a little bit older there. Bobby Portis, who reportedly the Bucks weren't necessarily against moving if they need be. You got Taurean Prince, Chris Middleton there in that starting lineup. How they're gonna play out well if Taurean Prince ends up starting for that team. So there's a lot of questions with that Milwaukee Bucks team, but I still do think that this is a team that is going to win a lot of regular season games. It's going to be a difficult matchup for the Chicago Bulls for multiple different reasons, especially now looking at our perimeter defense, how that's taken a big step backwards as far as in the starting lineup as well. So you look at that. Then you have the Cleveland Cavaliers. Now, this is going to be an interesting team because I know some Bulls fans are going to look at this Cleveland Cavaliers team, squint their eyes really close and think the Bulls really aren't that far off from the Cleveland Cavaliers. At least some people have already said that. I don't agree with that at all. This is a team that you look at last year, them being able to have 48 wins, but Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland, Evan Mobley all played less than 60 games last year, right? So if this team has anything close to relative health, now that's a thing in the NBA. Like, what is really relative health in the NBA? That's a whole different conversation, and I understand that. But if they do have that, on top of being a team that is still youthful enough with a lot of their pieces, that their pieces aren't done taking steps up or even leaps in certain cases. And if that does happen, the Cleveland Cavaliers are a team that's definitely could be looking to compete more with the New York Knicks and being in that 50-win territory and trying to, be one of the better teams in the East. Another extra year of Max Strus, who absolutely killed us in a couple of games last year as well. And so, they just re-signed Isaac Okoro to that team, and what he is as a defender for them, not really an offensive presence, but what he is as a defender for them is what especially. So this is a team that, again, top heavy, their starting five. I really like their starting five. It comes down to, can the coach get the most out of it? But like I said, with the youth that they have here on this Cleveland Cavaliers team, that's the thing that really has a big deal for them. Amani Bates signed a new two-way contract with them as well. I know a lot of Bulls fans are kind of high on him. I look at it as it is what it is. Like, I'm not really too worried about that. They got a new head coach coming in here as well. So, they're hoping that that's going to help them push them a little bit further as well. So you're really looking at this team to see, what do the Cleveland Cavaliers, bringing back continuity, betting on their team, and them still having a young core. And don't overlook the Cleveland Cavaliers from being a team that can make a big move if they choose to move off of one of those players that they did sign. And so you got to look at that as well. And then the Indiana Pacers are the next team in the Eastern Conference. 47 wins, the 6th seed in the East last year. This is a team with tremendous upside. Tyrese Halliburton is really, really good, right? We know that, right? We know that he's good. They made a trade, midseason trade for Pascal Siakam. So now they're starting off the season with him on their roster. They also lost Benedict Mathurin last season. I don't know if they ever got any of Ben Mathurin and Pascal Siakam on that same team. Playing together. I think Ben Mathurin had been out by then. But look, you look at Aaron Naismith, another player that they're hoping to make a step up. They re-signed TJ McConnell this offseason as well, right? So Miles Turner, still a player that has youth, right, but has been around for a while as well. This is a team that those 47 wins last season you can see turn into more than that, right? You can easily see them being on the path of them being a team that's trying to compete for 50-plus wins next season as well. So what does Haize mean by all this, right? What do I mean by all this? The Central Division is going to be a very, very tough division next season. And so the Bulls playing the most of their games against any opponents, being their own opponents in that Central Division, it's going to be interesting to see how the Bulls do stack up. And if the Bulls can stack up well in their division, that actually bodes well for them to be able to compete with the other teams in the Eastern Conference. Now, you got other teams that are going to be making step-ups as well, right? The Orlando Magic is a team that I think is going to be making a big step up next season, winning 47 games as well last season. The Sixers last year, with all the turmoil on that roster, winning 47 games. Joel Embiid has a lot that he has to answer as far as this season as well. He's going to be out for it. The Miami Heat are hoping to prove some things. So the Eastern Conference is not an easy conference at all. You also have LaMelo Ball, if he's back healthy. that Charlotte Hornets team can go from winning 21 games to them pushing for 40 to 45 games, right? So this is going to be a tough conference, but I think one of the Bulls' biggest battles and most important battles is going to come down to how they stack up in their own division. And let me know what you guys think on this, right? Like, the Bulls are a really tough team to really gauge what they're going to be. We think their play style is going to change, but I don't feel confident in just, saying that outright because Billy Donovan is still the head coach of the Chicago Bulls team. Can you say that the style is really going to change that much until we see it? No. We think that Josh Giddey's going to come in here. Some of us think that Josh Giddey's going to come in here and be in a position where he has a more likely scenario to thrive, but that's not something that you can just assume either, right? So, health for the Bulls as well can be an up and down thing. Nikola Vucevic goes back and forth between having a healthy season and not so healthy season. Zach LaVine, it is what it is when it comes down to Zach. He's going to be banged up at some point this season. So I think that, don't overlook how important the Central Division battle is going to be next season, not only for the Chicago Bulls, but overall in the Eastern Conference if you're a general NBA fan. But let me know what you guys think on that down below. How do you feel the Bulls will stack up in the Central Division? And do you look at this now with the information that's given and also look at this and say, hey, this is something that could really maybe it makes the Bulls more battle tested over the course of the season because they're going to have so many interdivision opponents that are going to be some of the better teams in that Eastern Conference. Let me know what you guys think on that down below. All right, let's get into the next topic for today. This one that we're going to get into is the Bulls roster spot battle. So I broke this down into two different things, right? Because you got to look at it two different ways. I think we've commonly looked at it as the Bulls who signed, who to Exhibit 10 deals, Kenny Lofton Jr., EJ Liddell, Marcus Domas, right? Those guys signed Exhibit 10 deals. Those guys are probably competing more so for the two-way contract. The Bulls have 3 two-way contracts that they can give out. 2 of those are already out, right? You got one to Adama Sanogo. You got another one to DJ Stewart, who earned it through his play in Summer League. But keep in mind, two-way contracts you can waive at any point. You can sign a new player to a two-way contract. But you got Kenny Lofton Jr., EJ Liddell, Marcus Domas, who all signed Exhibit 10 deals, who could be looking to try to make their way on those two-way contracts. Kenny Lofton Jr. Probably has the best chance out of that. EJ Liddell, maybe on the outside chance, depending on how his defense and things shake up. But those are players that are competing for that, right? With DJ Stewart and Adama Sanogo already signed to those deals, I don't think, unless they come into training camp and have a bad one, that they're going to take those away. The Bulls are already familiar with Adama Sanogo. This is a player they signed on draft night. They didn't draft him, but they signed him on draft night. And DJ Stewart's a player that has been in here. He's been in this system. They've taken a look at him. So that leaves one open two-way contract for the rest of these guys probably on G League deals if they decide to stay with the Chicago Bulls. So you have in that spot, you got 3 players fighting for one two-way contract, and that is Kenny Lofton Jr., EJ Liddell, and Marcus Domas. Domas, who, in my opinion, should be counting his blessings for the fact that after that performance in Summer League, that the Bulls still kept him on an Exhibit 10 deal. That shows that there is something that they see in Domas, right, where they believe in. He drew comparisons to Max Strus, things like that, but they saw something in Domas that they want to give him an opportunity through training camp to see what he brings, to see how he develop, and maybe, just maybe, he ends up on a two-way. Now, I think the most likely scenario is he ends up just a straight-out G League deal, and the Bulls try to develop him, and that's fine. And then that brings down that last spot to Kenny Lofton Jr. and EJ Liddell. EJ Liddell, a player that put up really good stats in the G League last year. Kenny Lofton Jr. also put up really good stats in the G League, but there's a little bit more NBA actual data to go off on than Kenny Lofton Jr. He's a player that a lot of people thought should have played more on that Memphis Grizzlies team. He did not. And so now he's trying to earn his spot, earn his role. Can he do that here with Chicago? That's going to be interesting to see. But that's the way that is kind of shaking out right now, right? I know some people had held out for Henry Drell. ATS is one of the people who was very vocal about Henry Drell and, hoping that Henry Drell could still make it. But it seems like the Bulls have, for the most part, moved on from Henry Drell and have realized, hey, he's been here, a guy that's been here. He signed a new Exhibit 10 deal with the Portland Trail Blazers. He's gone. That spot is gone. He's no longer coming to the Chicago Bulls. The Bulls let that go, and they have a new guy maybe that can fit a similar type of upside in Marcus Domas that maybe they're hoping that they can get some out of. So, that's what it comes down to. But then it comes down to the Bulls' final roster spot, and this is why I said I broke it up in 2 different tiers. For a long time, even on Locked on Bulls, for example, yesterday, I talked about, Kenny Lofton, EJ Liddell, not Marcus Domas, but Kenny Lofton, EJ Liddell kind of being in that battle to compete for that final actual roster spot for the Bulls. But I think it comes down to really just THT and Ernolot Batum. And I think that these are two players both that can play the 2/3. THT is more just flat out 2, but he's played a lot at the 3, right? And they're very, bring very similar kind of upsides. Right now, the thing that I found out about THT that kind of changed this a little bit for me is that THT is ineligible to sign a two-way contract because of how many years he's played in the NBA. So that means that is not there for THT. I think initially when the Bulls signed him, I thought, hey, he could turn into a two-way player, but he's not. So that leaves either a roster spot for THT, or it means that he's going to sign a G League deal outright. Now, I don't think that that's going to happen. There's a slight chance of it. We've seen veterans before sign G League deals just because the market is not there for them. But THT is something to look at there. And I think that this now is turning into, when you look at just the facts of the matter, because he can't sign a two-way, that it brings that final roster spot down to Ernolop and THT. And that is where things get a little interesting. Like I said, the one thing that THT definitely would have as a leg up on an Ernolop Batum is the fact that he's done it at the NBA level. He's played more NBA minutes. He's averaged 10 points per game in the NBA. He's done those type of things. So if you're looking at that aspect of it, as far as the proven nature of it, THT may have the inside edge there if the Bulls are looking to say, we want to fill the back end of our bench with veterans that we know can come in, and if we need to, keep in mind, yeah, he's a veteran because he's played in the NBA since 2019, but he's only 23 years old, right? He turns 24 in November, so around the start of the season, he'll still be just 24 years old. And that's a player that over the last 3 years, 2021-22, 2022-23, and 2023-24, he's averaged over 10 points per game each one of those seasons. Now, he's had to play over 20 minutes per game to get that. Last year, 19.8. Still, I'm rounding that up to 20 minutes and 10.1 points per game. He's averaged 9.8 for his NBA career. Does that put him above a player like Ernolot Batum? But then, Batum, if you're looking at the things that could give him the edge to make it, is that this is a player that AK scouted himself. He flew overseas to watch a EuroLeague game, and in that game, that's where Ernolot Batum was. And I'm sure he watched him several years before then, right? He was familiar with him before then. But Ernolot, while being taller than THT, while having a longer wingspan, while being a more accomplished player, if you're bringing in both of their professional careers and count EuroLeague as part of Ernolot's professional career, some people kind of like to undercut EuroLeague as a professional career just because it's not NBA. But Ernolot, 215 pounds, 6'6", kind of more versatile at playing that wing position. THT, 234 pounds at being 6'4", right? So there's that. Ernolot Batum also in EuroLeague, which was a much more accomplished three-point shooter than even what THT has done at the NBA level. The question, though, is that can Ernolot do that at the NBA level? THT, a career 29% three-point shooter. His best season in his career was only a 33% shooter, taking 3.6 attempts per game. The question that it comes down to is that how do the Bulls view these two players and what they can bring to the roster? And that is something that we don't have the edge in. And that may be something that is not determined and probably shouldn't be determined until training camp as well for the Chicago Bulls. So the question is which one of these guys builds chemistry? Ernolot's also already been in the Chicago Bulls system, is familiar with Billy Donovan with the coaching staff, familiar with the player development department, familiar with these players as well, even though we didn't get to see a lot of it on the NBA court. Maybe he has a little bit more chemistry with these guys that could give him the edge as well in a training camp battle. So I think that's what it comes down to. It comes down to three players competing for the final two-way spot, two players competing over the final roster spot for the Bulls next season, and that's where we're going to have to see where things shake out. But let me know what you guys think when you look at it. Who do you see getting that final two-way spot, and who do you see getting the final roster spot for the Chicago Bulls next season in those battles that we talked about? Let me know that down below. Before we go, we got to talk about this, and I'm not going to go into detail. If you want detail on this, I went into very big detail on it over on Locked On Bulls, so make sure you guys check that out as well. But Billy Donovan came in at 24th on CBS's head coaching ranking. He came in ranked in the I wouldn't be enthused tier. That was a tier with Chauncey Billups, Billy Donovan, JB Bickerstaff, who's now with the Pistons, and Doc Rivers. So That's a tier that I kind of all agree with him being in. You guys know I'm not the biggest Billy Donovan guy, fan or detractor of Billy Donovan. And I think when it comes down to it, Billy Donovan is a coach, and he's not a terrible coach, but he's not a great coach. And that doesn't mean that he's a good coach for this team. When we battle that all down, that's always what I say when it comes to Billy Donovan. But I'm not surprised that Billy Donovan is in this tier, mainly because of, when you look at it, his record has gotten worse each of the last 3 years. He's gotten worse. And this is also a team that doesn't necessarily fit his style perfectly on paper. That's why it's interesting to see if Billy Donovan can adapt. That's also something he's not done very well in his tenure here with the Chicago Bulls, is adapt well. So there's a lot of reasons for questions when it comes down to Billy Donovan and what he's going to be able to bring here. And CBS having him in this tier is not bad. We look at coaches ranked above him: Kenny Atkinson, Willie Green, Jamal Mosley, Jason Kidd, Taylor Jenkins, Quinn Snyder, Michael Malone. Mike Malone definitely should be higher on this tier list. Of course, coaches like Popovich, Spo, those type of guys, Mike Brown, Joe Mazzulla, Tom Thibodeau. I agree with everybody. I don't look at anybody on this list and think that they should have been ranked above Billy Donovan. I mean, that they should have been ranked below Billy Donovan. And you look at the players that the coaches that were ranked below him are all basically first-time coaches, basically saying we don't have enough information on him. Billy Donovan is not that far off from being ranked in the tier of coaches that are first-time coaches. And take that for what you will. Like I said, if you want more detail on that, definitely go and check on Locked On Bulls, man. But I just wanted to mention that here. Be thorough. You know what it is. Make sure you guys are following the show at Bull Central Pod. You send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, bullcentralpod@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We are the number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related, but that is because of you, lovely and beautiful people. And like I like to end every episode on, love you guys. Go Bulls. See red if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.